I want to begin with a little story about a photographer, a very famous photographer. And he got a call from his editor, and he said, okay, there's a huge, this was in California, and he said there's a huge forest fire, unfortunately not uncommon in California, and I guess it was going into a residential area, and it was quite the news story. And as I said, he's very famous, so he was known for his the images he's able to capture. So they sent him to this forest fire, and they said, you know, work your magic, we want some images. So the man, well, as he said, he's very famous. I've said that a few times to emphasize the fact he's not just famous, he knew he was good at photography work. And he had a little bit of ego on him. So he shows up, and as soon as he looks, and he's looking at the forest fire from the town he was in, and he said, no, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work. And he said, I've got to get to the air. I need a wider view of this. We've got to get to the air, and I want to get to the air now. And he talked to the local people, and they said, oh, no, you can't do it. It's not. He said, no, I'm doing it now. I said, I want this shot. I want it today. Because I have other things I've got to get doing. Well, he wasn't making anywhere with the local authorities, so he just picked up his phone. And he called his editor and said, I want the shot. I want it today. Have an airport. We're at the local tiny little municipal airport. Have an airplane ready. I'm getting the shot. The editor, because of the guy's notoriety, he said, absolutely. He learned it was always good to do that, because 9 times out of 10, it actually helped the editor as well with all the accolades that happened. So anyways, sure enough, he got his way. He hops into a vehicle. They rush him out quickly, because he's like, let's go, to the airport. Big smile on his face, because people are listening to him as usual, and because he sees the airplane at the end of the runway on this little grass strip. Wonderful. He slams the vehicle's door shut. He runs to the plane. He hops in the plane, slams the door, and he says, okay, let's go. Pilot turns her into wind, speeds up, and off they are into the air. They're flying around, and they start flying and start leveling off, and he says, okay, I want you to go towards the fire. And the pilot goes, why do you want to go for the fire? He goes, well, I want to take pictures of it. Like, the guy's astonished. Like, first of all, the guy doesn't know who I am. I'm this famous photographer, you know, and someone should have told him. But I want to take pictures of it. And the guy goes, why would you want to take pictures of it? He goes, I'm a photographer. That's what I do. He's getting so mad. With this, the pilot's face kind of blanches. And he goes, you mean you're not the instructor? I don't know if I want to be on that plane. And something tells me it wasn't obviously the plane that he expected. This individual, hopefully through the story you got the point. He was impatient, right? Look at what I want. Give me what I want. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, he usually got what he wanted. So it just reinforced his behavior. And we've just read our scripture passage, and actually what an underlying message is it just that, impatience? You're going to go, what? I didn't see that. We'll get to that connection a little bit later. But it's his impatience, and unfortunately, you know, we on TV and radio or whatever media you use, you look and we talk about all this different conditions and diseases and problems we have, and unfortunately we do have a lot in this world. But the one we don't talk about, which I'm going to talk about today, is impatience. Impatience is an illness. It's a disease. You can call it whatever, and you say, "Oh, John, you're being melodramatic. You're overreacting." Well, with impatience, you have a very good friend of impatience. And the very good friend of impatience that goes hand in hand is self-centeredness. Now, which one comes first? We could sit here and argue. Because you're impatient, you become, you have to have everything now. And is that because you're self-centered? Or is it because you're impatient that you want everything quick, that self-centeredness comes along? I'm not sure. But the truth of the matter is, or at least it seems that way, is impatience and self-centeredness do go hand in hand. Now, let me think, what was it, the 80s, 90s? they had this, they called the generation. Do you remember what they called the generation then? The me generation. You all knew that. That's not a good sign. Or maybe it is. You're aware of it, so we can fight it. The me generation. And you'd read articles, and there would be problems, and everything's me, 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 me. And media, you would see movies and stuff, and it would be portraying this fact that, if it's all about you, that's what should happen. This whole idea of look out for number one. I know it's been around long before the 80s. We know that. It's been around for all of humanity. But it seemed as though, unfortunately, in the 80s, it became like a good thing in the 90s. Before, if you were self-centered, people would say, quit being a self-centered jerk. We still say that. But society has accepted it more. And we accept it in sneaky little ways. You can do anything you want, I mentioned earlier. You know what I loved? I said that. When I said you can do anything you want, she shook her head no. I don't know who she's thinking about, but it might be mommy and daddy. I don't know, but that was a wonderful answer. As Christians, we know we can't do this, and yet we're constantly fighting this society that's telling us something different. But remember, we are in this world, but we're not of this world. And I said last week, and I'll say it again, because it applies here, we are better, not better, we're better off. Because we know where we're going. Now, this me generation, at the time, philosophers and psychologists, and they were studying this phenomenon because that's what they like to do, and they were interested to see what was going to happen. And I can't remember, I'm sure some of them predicted correctly, but some people think, it's a generational thing, or it's a phase, and it comes and goes, and there's differences. But what happened with the me generation is, it either taught or allowed other generations to let go. And instead of being a contained, cyclical thing that'll come and go, what we had is more and more a society, just no matter what your age, adhering to this idea that, okay, it's all about me. So instead of getting better or something that we could deal with, it's something that we certainly have to deal with, but we have to deal with in a greater scale. And again, these partners of self-centeredness and impatience. And our lesson for today, we're going to look at a little bit later, is the exact opposite. Remember, Jesus was the great rabbi, the great teacher. And everything we need to do in our lives, everything, at one time we can go through the Bible and we can show how Jesus taught us. He never just said, hey guys, do it. He said, guys, do it, and here, I'll show you how you can do it. Because he knew we needed help. And our lesson today is just that. He's showing us how not to act. He's showing us how to be Christ-like, or how to be more like him. When you look at society now, you're going to say, well, okay, wait a second, John. Everything's not self-centered. No, absolutely not. There's people here that are still Christ-like. There are people who are still walking the path. There are people who don't know Christ and do nice things. The thing you always have to ask yourselves, though, is why is someone doing something? Because we've all met those people who do something and then say, I did that. Wasn't that nice? See that? See that? I did that. And they do that for the next 20, 30 years. I have a sister like that. If she gave me, I swear if I asked her, she could tell me, I had a piece of candy and I split it in half 30 years ago. And I'm like, you're missing the point. I watch, actually no, I don't watch. I hear about it because I don't watch Oprah, but Oprah loves giving away cars. And sometimes you say, is it because Oprah's just a nice person? Some people say absolutely. Some people wonder. Some people say, think of the notoriety she gets from that. The increase in ratings, she'd make more money than the price of the car. I know, so we always have to watch that, right? And this is also, as Christians, we know good works don't save you. This is another issue that people kind of get confused about sometimes. Oh, I'm a good living person. That's nice. I know good living atheists. They're not going to heaven. So what do we do with this? Now, once we've addressed this idea, we have self-centeredness, we have this impatience, and we realize that it's everywhere in our lives, every aspect of our lives. about it. Who here has been driving down the road, and I know the answer already. You've been driving down the road and someone cut you off. Last night, as I said, I'm between two houses right now. I was coming back and someone went through a red light. Now you might say, oh, they just missed the light. It's not like they sped up because they knew it. It's not like they slowed down and then gunned it. It's just, I'm going. Have you ever been in the grocery store and someone cut you off? I have to tell you one story, and this was a great story because it made me laugh. Before I wrecked my back when I was a chiropractor, I had my practice in the same office as my father-in-law, who was a family physician. And what would happen, people would try to cut in on appointments by getting there like earlier or things like this. And what would happen is, one day I was doing a house call, and I thought, oh, I forgot something. So I just instead of going, I just normally went through the house. He had his practice in his house. I just went through the normal entrance, and someone was getting out of the car, and they ran ahead of me. And then very politely stopped and held the door, good morning, everything, went down, and they went down the stairs into the waiting room, and they sat down, and the look on their face was hilarious when they sat down, and I just kept walking and walking right in past everyone, right into the office, and the person's jaw literally dropped. So I enjoyed that story. But it was this whole idea. It's this whole idea, one example, we can all think of it, of putting yourself in the center of the universe. And Jesus did the exact opposite, right? His whole coming here, think about it, was an inconvenience. But he endured that. He endured that for us. Now, we look at our lives, though, and this is the thing. We are always constantly, as Christians, fighting this secular world, the world around us that tells us, no, look out for number one and get something for the way you want it, and you want it now, right? We are on-demand satellite systems. Everything seems on demand because we can't wait anymore. They've actually done studies recently. I was listening to a news program one day, and they said recently they've actually done studies and attention spans have decreased. But should we be surprised? So, just think about, for example, if all these things in life, it's everyone around you is telling you, get it now, get it the way you want. Even the best of Christians comes out, maybe by the end of the day goes, I kind of like that now, the way I want. It's easy to fall in the trap, but we're not supposed to. And everything in our lives is going that way if it hasn't already, depending on the individual. And the thing I want to add is, that includes God. What do you mean, on-demand God? Okay, I have a little 3-year-old, and God bless her. She'll come to me sometimes, and she has a little cut on her finger. She has a little cut on her finger, and she'll say, "Daddy, I need a Band-Aid." "Why do you need a Band-Aid?" "Because I hurt my finger. I cut my finger." "You cut your finger. Which one?" "This one." "Okay, so which one?" "This one." "I don't see anything on there." Which one?" "This one." "Okay." So I put a little Band-Aid on, and she feels great. There's no mark or anything, but she feels great. In the science lab that I work in my school now, we have, at the side, we have a nice little first aid kit. And the same thing, I actually had a real cut, and I went over and I had to put a Band-Aid on there because I cut it on something. And I want us to think about a first aid kit for a second. In a first aid kit, you go to it, and it has everything you need for minor things, right? Everything you need. It's there when you need it. If you don't need it, guess what? It's still there, but you can ignore it. Isn't that how we treat God? God's like a first aid kit for so many people. Definitely for the secular world. Nominal Christians, definitely. Some people sitting here today, and we know better, but we get sucked into this silly world around us. Well, He's there. He's there. And I know I used to be that way. Before I accepted Christ as my Savior, I was exact that way, because I was raised in a Christian home, so I knew He was there to help me. God, I won't bug you, you don't bug me, was my attitude. Unless I needed something. Because we think, as long as I'm happy, he can make me happy if something's bothering me. I can open the first aid kit of God and he can help me somehow. But otherwise, I don't need that. Just like that cut on my finger, I don't need the first aid kit until I get the cut. Yeah, I know we've talked about this before, you and I, in the past. I've always wondered why, or many people wondered why, and I wondered until I really thought about it, why are these people who seem to have everything so upset? Or why do these people in Hollywood overdose and have all these issues? And it's because they're really not happy. But they've fallen completely into this silliness of society that says if you want to be happy, you take the bull by the horns and you make your happiness and you're in control and forget everyone else. And then they wonder why they're not happy. When it comes to happiness, society tells us that we are specialists. But I have to quote, as soon as I say the word specialist, I have to quote those famous words of the great Canadian writer and humorist Stephen Leacock. A specialist is someone who knows more and more about less and less until they know absolutely everything about nothing. In society, we are happiness specialists, right? Society, we don't look like this. We don't have the peripherals because I don't care about the peripherals. I care about my goal and what I want. And as we do this, we've all met people, and you wonder why they don't know what's going on around them. And we've met people like that. And generally, we either feel sorry for those people or we don't like them. Because maybe you're the person of the day that's in their way to getting their happiness. And they have to move you out of the way. Okay? And we don't like that. We know we're supposed to be better than that. But sometimes we slip into it, and sometimes we have issues, and it's understandable, it's acceptable to make mistakes. That's what I'm saying. Even in churches, we put the blinders on. I've been to different churches, and I'm quite honest and happy that this isn't one of them, or I wouldn't say this. It's the fact, I've been to churches that it doesn't matter if I stood up here and talked about whatever. What I said wouldn't matter at all. As long as 11:59:59, you're out of here. And that's it. I had my own congregation years ago. A dear gentleman, wonderful man. Every Sunday, and I think I told you this before, the reason I stand here before, how I like it, because I'm just John. Upstairs the pulpit, that's God. I'm just John, I'm here. But how I started was the fact that this dear elder of the church, every Sunday slept, every sermon, and then he would tell me at the end of the service, great service, great sermon. I thought it must be great for your sleeping. I thought that, but I didn't say it. But throughout the week, he would be upset that people didn't go to church. We've all made mistakes. We all do silly things. We're humans. That's acceptable. We give it to God. That's why we do our confession. We show, no, there is a better way. And we want that path. And he forgives and forgets our mistakes. But we do that sometimes as churches. You might have heard someone say that. Oh, yeah, my next door neighbor just doesn't go to church. Okay. But are we looking down on that person for it? Does building ourselves up make us better? No. By pushing them down, push people down to build ourselves up, that doesn't make things better. But that is part of what I mentioned it today, because that's part of this silliness, because that's what society tells you. Anyone and anything in your way, you squash it, because your happiness is what you want. And don't let anyone get in the way. Thank God, literally, that's not what he does. As I mentioned before, Jesus, his coming, really, think about it. He's in heaven. He's been here forever. Part of the Holy Trinity. And now he's coming to earth to deal with us. Talk about slumming it. Really, Really, he's gone from perfection to a world of sin, but he's done it all out of love. And our passage for today, the two parts here, shows us this. Has anyone here ever had a long, hard, tiring day and just been dead tired and just like, I don't want to talk to anyone else, I don't want to talk to the kids, I don't want to talk to anyone else, leave me alone. You might have said it or thought it, or done both. Right? We can understand that, we can relate to that. This is what Jesus is having. Can you imagine every day, as soon as the word gets out, every day, wherever he goes, no personal space. It's not like the crowds are around him. The crowds are trying to touch him. And I think every one of us here would be like, because we get sick and tired of it. And what we see in our passage today is Jesus is tired. He sees the disciples, they're tired, so they go away. But what does he do as soon as he has that tiny little rest on that boat? Tiny rest because they went away to get a full rest, never got it. But what does Jesus do as soon as that boat hits the shore? He starts all over again. See the difference between society and what Jesus does? Society says, look out for number one. Get it now. Get it the way you want. And Jesus says, look out for everyone else. And you can accommodate and you reach out to people. Could you imagine if, seriously, I said this before, can you imagine if God said, no, I'm only going to reach out to people who are exactly the way I want them? Guess what? None of us would be saved. And yet we go through life with this silliness. And how often do we, to dear friends and family, we go against them because they're just not the way we think they should be. I'm not saying if they're doing something wrong or doing something that's against God that we condone it, but we still love them. And part of that love, and part of the definition of Christian love in Acts we read, is sometimes telling someone, that's not right, you shouldn't be doing that. We don't do it to say, oh, that's not right. We don't do it to look down upon people, but Christian correction is biblical. And if you're doing it out of love and concern, it's going to come through as love and concern. As opposed to the people around them, the secular people around them that are going to do it just because it makes them feel better. Society says, narrow the focus. Society says, if they even accept anything to do with religion, they'll say, yeah, use God and Jesus like your first aid kit, if you have to. But Jesus and God are the opposite. They want more interaction with you. They want you to interact with others. And as we talked about earlier, what God and Jesus has planned for each and every one of us, his plan's the best plan. So when God and Jesus, Holy Spirit, and all three are saying the same and doing the same things, and that is, put others first. Stop. And be patient. There's some amazing